Hi, everybody. Nice to be with you again, albeit in this different format. Um, I am going to be recording this presentation, which is all the week two material, and I realized that it's enough that it would be difficult, very difficult, to get through all of it in one class. So I'm really glad that we had this kind of extended pause between week one and week two because it allowed me to put together the reading material, which I hope you took a look at or just at least browse through it, and also give me a chance to put out this presentation. And so I'll do half of the presentation, part one, in this recorded form, and then the second half we'll do in class. So, all right, here we go. And just to check in with where I am today, I'm feeling good, and also I'm excited to be trying to do this whole process of making linear what's in my brain, which is much more kind of like just like lots of points connected in a big cloud. So I'm working on this process of learning how to get them back out and share them in a format and a linear way that actually is useful. So please bear with me. I'm going to I'll do my best. And so let's get into it. I'm excited about sharing this material. It's been really good to go over it again. And I've had some kind of insights even just today while I was out at work. So I'm hoping that some of that comes out in this presentation. So, body as a life unit. In this presentation, I'll be going over part one, which is going to be 3 sections. Try 3. We'll talk about the body as a life unit, which will kind of tie in some of the attributes that we discussed and brought up in the life unit model from week 1. We're going to get into talking about stuck states. So in the paper, we talked about a maladaptive stress response. This could be, people often refer to this as a trauma response. Some state where our physiology gets kind of chronically stuck in this maladaptive either fight or flight mode or freeze mode, and it basically causes issues. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about stuck states in this presentation. And then we're going to get into talking about physical practice. So how can we work with the stuck states? How can we affect change, support our body? So that's what we're going to talk about in part 1. Part 2, when we get to class, we will talk about challenges. Okay, body as a life unit. So during week 1, I proposed this model that we will use in Triplex to talk about this life unit. And so just kind of refresh your memory, a life unit has a boundary, things can go in and out from the boundary. A life unit has some skills, like really interesting ones, awareness and intention, and life force. You know, and just like we went over this. I hope maybe you've been processing some of this since our last meeting. So the researcher Stephen Porges, who came up with this polyvagal theory, which breaks down our autonomic nervous system function into really like 2 main areas. Kind of like there's this main safety response, and then there's this other mode, which is a stress response to external stimuli. And our bodies are always taking in the environment in the background and making choices about what is safe and what is dangerous. So Stephen Porges, when he was doing his research, he realized that our bodies was taking in this information and making all these decisions for our autonomic nervous system regulation. And so he didn't want to use the term perception to talk about that because it wasn't something that we as ourselves were aware of. It was just happening automatically. Our bodies were doing this. So he created this new term, neuroception, to distinguish it from like our personalities, perception. It's a neuroception. This is actually the physical body having awareness of its surroundings, actually making observations. And the interesting thing that I wanted to point out and tie this to the life unit model that Triplex Training uses is that Stephen Porges was talking about how our bodies, in his theory, he's talking about how neuroceptions are actually, this system makes a decision about whether something is dangerous or something is safe. There's actually a choice that the physical body, that our nervous system is making. And so in a way, I want to tie that to the Triplex Training model. So what I was talking about with the model is like, how does the body actually view the world? The body is creating a model of the external world as it's navigating, and it's simple model. It's a very simple model. The body is like, is something safe or is something dangerous? And then based on that decision, it actually intentionally, you could say intentionally, activates certain autonomic nervous system function. And so I hope that I just think that's, wanted to tie that back to the model that I had proposed, because I think it's maybe going to be helpful as we see that our physical bodies are actually making meaning out of their experience. So like a meaning that the body makes out of, say, a cold temperature, like at some point the body detects enough cold that the body's like, what does this cold mean? What does it mean? It's searching for meaning. And at some point it means danger. And then the reptilian circuit in our brain will kick in and actually do things like shift around our blood supply and change our heart rate, change our breath rate, all to keep the body alive. That's what the body wants to do. It's working to survive. And so something that was interesting about Stephen Porges' studies is that he really started understanding that mammals are very different from reptiles, and mammals are social beings, and our social nature comes out of, or I'm not the order, like the evolutionary process of social animals. It required us to be able to, as creatures, to make decisions about what's safe and what's dangerous when it comes to actually social interactions, interacting with other human beings. And this was a part of our survival strategy, and all mammals have this actually. So there are actually differences in the physical structure of our nervous systems, and say the way that our lungs and our heart are separated from the core. It's different, and it's wired differently in mammals than it is in reptiles. And that's because mammals are social, or it allows for mammals to be social, because we need to do things like, we have these social bonds, and they help us to survive. It's just like a new emergent phenomena that mammals have in their tool belt as a strategy for making it for surviving out there in the world. And these circuits are pretty cool because it's like it opens up these new possibilities, new strategies for our survival. We don't have to just completely react to our environment and slither around like reptiles. We can creatively solve problems. We can work together collaboratively. So our personal platform of power is our ability to connect. We can connect with other human beings, and our power to connect, I would suggest, goes further than just connecting with other human beings. It goes to our ability to connect with ourself and our internal experience, and to connect with all of reality, or all of the whole of the universe, if we so choose. But so our ability to connect is a very precious, unique gift of our mammalian body that we're traveling with. And if you talk about the power to connect, I want to talk about the power of our physical body when that power is not blocked by any constriction or by any stuckness in our body. And just think about a little tiny baby. Babies are very small, right? But I think you all probably remember having a baby reach out and with their hand grabbing your finger or grabbing your hair. And just like this, the size of the baby relative to that grip strength and what's happening in that moment, I just have this experience of at least the babies that I've interacted with where I was just like really surprised at how powerful that grip is. And for me, I think that illustrates what I'm trying to talk about in this physical body. Our physical bodies are amazing, and when we have our natural, unimpeded flow of life force available to the physical structures of our body, it is just, it's just amazing. And so being able to cultivate that as in an adult life form, to be able to cultivate that and maintain connected to my full unimpeded life force is something that I personally work on in my practice, because I find that to be something that I would like to have. I consider that to be something that would be better for me in my life. Okay, so another point that I just wanted to make really quickly about that mammalian versus reptilian circuit is that mammals, we have these different circuits, and so the fight or flight mode, I'm kind of like, do I say this now or do I say this later? I'm going to say it now and just see what happens. So part of our evolution, like another reason, maybe like another reason or another benefit of having this new circuit that we have, where we basically have the ability to experience the autonomic nervous system function of fight or flight or freeze without fear. This is an ability that we have, and this is demonstrated in things like play. So play, or excited love, that Winnicott called it, is this experience that human beings have, or mammals actually have, where they can be mobilized into their fight or flight mode, into their sympathetic autonomic nervous system function. But they're not like so afraid. There is that energy of excitement. It's just an excitement, and it's not necessarily like a dangerous situation. And it opens up for new types of learning and new types of social engagement. And so that's a way that this new kind of mammalian circuit allows us to combine the older reptilian circuit with something new and create new possibilities for our bodies as these really amazing, interesting configurations. Another thing is, like, mammals have the ability to be immobilized, to basically be in a freeze response, in that style of a freeze response, like in a sleep response, where we are not afraid. We can actually sleep and cuddle up with other mammals. And so reptiles may not really be able to do that. They may not be able to um, experience being so close to something that could potentially be dangerous and actually go into a restful state, into this immobilized state that's a restful restorative state. Okay, so that was my introduction. So stuck states. So I want to talk about stuck states, and what I'm talking about here are states in the body, in our physiology, where we have some sort of constriction or some sort of, I use term inefficiency in our physiology. And in polyvagal theory, Stephen Porges talks about maladaptive stress responses. These are like the responses of fight or flight or freeze that are chronically turned on to the point where they just become stuck. Our neurocircuitry actually can change over time, and our bodies can just maintain long-term stuckness in the state of fight or flight or freeze, or little variations of those, or kind of combinations of those. But oftentimes it's in response to some sort of traumatic event. And a traumatic event can be a very large, like acute, big event, single event in someone's life, or a traumatic event can be something like a prolonged exposure to psychological, emotional abuse, discrimination, and a lot of times many of us have experiences in childhood where just our basic needs are not met, and repeated exposure to those types of events can kind of build up this chronic trauma in our background. So those types of events, and then just basic life stressors, like at some point, whatever the cumulative amount of stress that external events that we've experienced, at some point internally, our bodies may become overwhelmed or overloaded with all of these particular stressors, and then at some point our body will just be shifting and has sensed that, okay, now I really know it's danger, and my body is going to shift into fight or flight mode or into the freeze mode, and it may chronically stay there because it's not able to get out, because it doesn't actually get cues that there is safety. So a body that's stuck in a traumatic response, it's happening inside of the person. It's an internal experience, and the tragedy of that is that it just disrupts that person's ability to actually connect. We were talking about how social, as mammals, our ability for social bonding is like what has opened up this new set of possibilities of interactions and life experience that reptiles don't have. But the tragedy of trauma is that people who have had those types of, or having that type of a traumatic response, have a disruption in their ability to connect, because they don't actually have the physical feeling of safety, regardless of whether or not their cognitive minds look around and tell them that they are safe. Physiologically, their felt experience says that they're not safe. So every person's body is different in terms of what amount of stressors is going to reach some threshold that might put a person into a state of having a traumatic response, or a chronic traumatic response, or an acute traumatic response. Every person's kind of internal experience, and then their physiology, which are all contributing to that, are all different. And there is really no there's nothing to say that there's a deficit of a person's character in terms of when their autonomic nervous system kicks in and decides that, hey, I need to be in a fight or flight mode, or hey, I need to be in a freeze mode right now. It's not something that, like, in our personality experience or like the sense of who we are, where we choose this. And so I just want to put that out there, that it's like that this is normal. Our bodies are doing what they're supposed to do if we go into some sort of a fight or flight or some sort of a freeze response. It's just natural. It's just what our bodies do. And they're doing it the best way that they know how, based on what they've learned and what they've experienced up to this date. So it's like nature, our nature here has been doing and will continue to do what it knows to do best in order to help us survive. And it's just a miracle that we've made it this far. That said, this accumulation of these stuck states in our body, this stress over time, it takes its toll. It negatively impacts our bodies. And these constrictions or these inefficiencies that exist, our bodies have to deal with the constant the tense muscles, or just the trauma that we're holding in our bodies, and eventually it can lead to suboptimal performance of our tissues and can lead to disease. And there's kind of an added channel, or an added kind of challenge, is that our personality, our personality can kind of realize that something's not going right with our bodies. But the personality may misinterpret the cause of like what is actually contributing to the response. And neuroception is so sneaky, and sometimes maybe the personality, like our cognitive understanding, can put two and two together and realize like, oh, every time I go to a hospital, I actually feel like my heartbeat beats really fast and I feel really weird. Like maybe someone figures that out and makes a cognitive connection there and links it up. But sometimes we do something like go out into a crowd of people and we feel weird, we feel bad, we don't know, and we think like, oh, I can't go out in public anymore. It must be that I went out in public and that's why I feel so bad. Or so dysregulated. And the personality, though, really sometimes knows and sometimes doesn't. It could be that the body picked up on something in the environment that was kind of triggering or activating, and didn't feel safe. But it might have been some music that was playing off in the background. It may not have been the fact that there was a big crowd of people. It may have been a particular pattern on a shirt or something, some picture that was in the environment that set the body into the state. The body is always picking up on what's going on around. I can share, okay, I wanted to go down this road about saying I went out one day to go to have my transmission fluid changed, and I was going to a place that I knew was on this street, but I didn't know exactly where it was. I'd only like ridden my bike and seen it from another direction, and I didn't know exactly where it was on this street. And I was driving in my car and I was paying attention, but then I kind of started thinking about something, or was just curious about what was going on outside, and then I had kind of stopped looking as I was driving along, looking for this oil change place that I was going to. And so I was kind of daydreaming. I was daydreaming as I was driving, and about a block, just barely a block after I actually had physically driven past this oil change place, I snapped back and I realized what I needed to do, that I was actually trying to go to this oil change place. And so when I turned my head, I saw the place was right there. And this is a bit anecdotal, but I connect this to my body was neurocepting the environment, and my body had picked up on the fact that I was right there by the oil change place, but cognitively, I was off in la la land. So, bodies are amazing. But yeah, our personalities, they don't, our cognitive abilities, they don't always know what time it is. Okay. So, what can we do? We can train our bodies to feel safe. And we can do this because thanks to understanding what the cues are, what those neuroception cues that come into our physical bodies that let our bodies know this is safe. I, the body, am safe. So we train the body by giving it exposure to the cues of safety. We also can train the body to feel, or to train the body to allow the body to actually complete stuck states, to actually complete the autonomic nervous system responses that the body is actually wanting to do in order to help come back into a regulated, safe state. But sometimes our personalities block some of that. So that is what can happen, what we can do to help. So the body can heal. And I would like to share my story at this point. Okay, so this is me at about age 1.5. I'm guessing on the ages here. I don't have a way to find out when these pictures were taken. And you can see in this picture that my eyes are looking pretty much mostly closed, and that's because when I was born, I had a congenital condition where the eyelid musculature did not fully develop. It's commonly called drooping eyelids. So I couldn't really open my eyes, and I could only tilt my head back. And this is at age 2.5. I can kind of tilt my head back. Here at age 3, I would be able to see my environment. I could see, but I was at risk for developing just different problems with my vision, and also different problems with the actual tissues of the eyes when they're not functioning according to, like, I guess, like a normally formed eyes. So my parents decided that I needed to have a surgery, and I actually had 2 surgeries. One of them was a failure, and one of them was a quote success. And at about age 4, there was the successful surgery where the surgeons took muscle from my leg and up in my thigh and transplanted muscles up above my brow and then down to my eyelid, and then kind of like constructed a crease to make it look as if I have an eyelid. And that was the surgical fix. So what happened during the surgery was actually, it was, well, let's say my older brother told me at one point, he's like, after you went to Chicago and when you came back, you were a different girl. And that was a traumatic experience for little Becca. And so the thing that I remember that was the most kind of traumatic part of it was at one point being held down on a table, like surrounded, kicking and screaming and throwing my arms everywhere, just everything I could possibly do to get away, and I couldn't get away. And they bandaged, my eyes were bandaged for weeks. I had bandage on my legs, and they would have to take the bandage off, I think is what they were trying to do in order to, check and see, like, how was it healing? But in this little drawing that I did, you can see, like, an aspect of this is that I felt totally alone. At least in my experience, I felt like it was me, and then everyone else was there to hold me down, and they had the power. I was completely powerless, and all I wanted to do was get away, but I couldn't. So that feeling of overwhelm was a traumatic experience for me that I feel like it's stuck with me for many years, but I'll keep going here. So age 5, I had a normal life. I had lots of brothers and sisters, but here's me with my younger brother Isaac. He looks very happy. I don't think I look necessarily super happy in that picture, but it's kind of subjective, right? So jumping way ahead. Age 27. I'm an adult. I'm living my life. I'm trying to do things. I mentioned before in telling my stories about myself that I just felt so afraid in the world to get out and actually kind of like either, number one, know what my dreams were, but like to actually do something and put myself out there. I just felt really afraid. And so in this picture of age 27, I felt like I don't have a lot of pictures to draw on, but this is interesting that I ended up having these different pictures to be able to put this presentation together. I feel like as a young person, I was pretty healthy. I did my life stuffs, and I feel like this picture at age 27, you can see like I've got a youthful look. I've got fullness about my face, and the eye that's on the looking here, the eye that's on the right of the screen, to me kind of has this little bit of deer in the headlights look to it. And I feel like that was something that was there. And as I continued to get older, I started having physical problems. You talked about the stuckness in our physical body creating disease. My stuckness was definitely in my intestines. It's like chronic constipation and issues with digestion. And by the time I was age 37, I'd been to see all these different practitioners. I was having anxiety, depression, just like lots of issues that I was trying to work on. And by age 38, I took this photograph, and it may be difficult to see here on the picture, but the whites of my eyes had all these like blood vessels that were really visible in them. And my presentation as I got older, which I think is normal, but also I was getting thinner. And I felt like I didn't know at the time, and I wasn't really on this whole, it could have something to do with me, my trauma, but I think that in the background there was this tiger that was always there, ever present, trying to get this little girl, and I was not able to get away. So at age 43, I started to work on this through some process work, process-oriented psychology, and some of the art exercises that I did that I'm going to include here. So yeah, this tiger was on top of me, and honestly, I have very, very few memories of my childhood, which I think is very normal or typical. A lot of people don't. But the way that I drew some of these pictures after the fact, when I was looking and kind of a little bit more analyzing them, it kind of came to me that the orange color probably did have something to do with my older brother James, who I believe he probably would have been pretty terrorizing of me in the home. He was later diagnosed with schizophrenia as a young man, and he actually committed suicide when I think he was about 21 or 22 years old. I was 16 at the time. But I think that was also kind of a factor of what went into my early childhood and my feeling of not feeling safe. Yeah, energetically, this was always present. And as I continued to work, I had drawn this picture of me. This is a figure that kind of shows how I was being impacted by this experience of the claw holding me down. So yeah, my eyes, I felt blind. I felt blind in the world. I had this anger. You can see how my head is like separated from my body by this like tension lines coming out. But as I worked and did my training, I eventually kind of was able to reset. I call this blank. This is how I was experiencing this state. I was like, I just needed to learn to be blank. And this is what my body looked like, blank. And by this point, I was feeling a lot healthier. I was feeling stronger in my body, less constriction in my body. The quality of my eyes changed, the quality of my skin changed. And here in this picture, you can see I feel like I'm still pretty thin. But after a year, I was flushing out a little bit. And then the story continues. So at age 46, I went off into the desert again. I did this numerous times, but I went off to this project. This is a picture of me with the little crew that I led to actually put up these trusses across the front of this Earthship. So I was on this crew. It was a much larger crew, but this is a little sub crew. And we left the project like this, and then this was me, age 46, so not long after that previous picture where you can see like, oh, I dropped weight, I'm looking very dry. So in the desert, high desert, so not that surprising, but still feeling like, still had released the constriction, but the life force, I was depleting my life force at this time. And then I had a move, and this move further depleted my life force. But now that I'm more stable, age 47, in my new place, I feel like I'm starting to build more of my life force back up. And I still have this quality where I feel like those constrictions that were there, I've been able to release them. So with the triplex training, I just want to stress that childhood up until age 37 of starting to really seriously work on, or I would say earlier than that, I started to work on like my nutrition and things like that, but really getting into the nuts and bolts of some of it, it basically took decades to get to the point where I was really noticing the disease that was in my body, to where I really needed to do something about it. So in terms of like doing training to shift and do things differently, and to give the body new experiences, to learn to be in a different way, to learn to respond to cues of safety that maybe it wasn't responding to before, just because my overall system was so out of balance, it couldn't come below that threshold of overload. It just took time. I had to keep working at it, but with consistency in my practice, I was able to just, I don't know, how do I say it? In a way, like, oh, I feel a little nervous saying, oh, I was able to heal. It's like, yeah, maybe I was able to heal. I feel like I'm still practicing. I was able to learn some really amazing things that I feel really happy about, and I feel like I want to be able to share them with other people. This is part of why I am doing what I'm doing, and I'm also doing this for myself. Also, learn how to put something in a linear order. So here, moving on to linear order, the physical practice. So what we want to do with the physical practice with triplex training is to we want to be working on awareness of our physical bodies, because once we can actually see something, we have an opportunity to do something about it. So training our ability to have more of our personality. I use the word personality to be a kind of a big bucket, and everyone can decide what their personality is. So the personality, the part that knows, includes like a cognitive component. Once it can see it and know that there's something happening with the body, has an opportunity to choose something different, like choose a training, choose an experience that might be good for the body, to help the body to heal. Find out, notice what is blocking the natural healing response. If our bodies get back into this safety response state, this ventral vagal regulation state, Our bodies are so amazing. They have a total, like this natural ability to heal. And so just getting the body back into that state in a lot of ways is it's just super valuable, and maybe even enough, depending on the life force that you've accumulated and what you have set up in your life situation. But so work on regulation, work on work with yourself, work with your environment, and over time start to work with other creatures, including humans. So we're going to go ahead and talk about regulating the stuckness. And we want to be able to go from, if we're stuck in a freeze state, a lot of times because this autonomic nervous system response, it detects the increase in danger or whatever it's assessing, danger up to life threat. Our response will ramp up through the fight flight mode into the freeze, and then we ramp back down. So like coming out of a freeze state means that we have to go oftentimes through the fight flight stage before we come back to the rest and digest stage, before we come back to that ventral vagal regulation. So that's one way that we can regulate and go back to the rest digest state. And if you are in fight flight, you want to go back to the rest and digest state. And there is also, I feel like I've experienced this, where you can just be in a frozen state and you can pretty quickly thaw all the way down to a rest and digest state. Like passing through the fight flight stage can be pretty graceful. So okay, so if you're in a freeze state and you want to get back to the fight or flight state, here's some trainings if you notice. So working on that awareness of like, oh, what are some of the qualities of freeze? And I would invite you to go back and look anywhere, Google search all over the internet, or look in the handout. So if you are in a chronic frozen state, or you've experienced yourself in a frozen state, you could do things that might help activate your body, turn your body back on into more of a fight flight mode. So for you, if you find that you are more stuck in a frozen state, doing aerobic exercise may really support your body to help to re-regulate. Something like boxing, something like martial arts, or even coffee. Coffee is stimulating, and coffee increases your beta brain waves. And that might be something that can help get you into that fight or flight mode, which then when your body is in that mode and you provide the cues of safety, may go back to that ventral vagal regulated state. You may like mobilizing music, or rapid breathing is something also that can stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so if you are in that, say you want to just go back to the rest and digest state, if you're in the fight or flight, or if you were in the freeze, you could just go directly for exposing your body to external cues of safety. So it's not just a matter of removing a threat. You need to actually expose your body to external cues of safety. And this is really interesting because, again, we're talking about this like reptile circuitry here, and we're exposing our the direct inputs that go right into our brainstem. We are through our ears, through our eyes. Our lungs have connections directly into the brainstem, so we can control that. And scent is another thing that goes directly there. And I didn't look up, there are some, certain essential oils you can use. I didn't include that in the presentation, but you can look up that if you're interested. So it is like this the reptile reset that we're doing, and like the portals in are through our eyes, through our ears, through our lungs, and our whole body is detecting it too. But so these external cues in the environment that our eyes are going to take in is it open enough? Is there a clear path of exit if I need to get out of here? I need to know if it's safe. I need to know if I can get away if I need to. And also, if there's less movement in the environment, that may be a cue that the body is going to take in and read that as a cue of safety. If the body is feeling at a comfortable temperature, that's going to help provide this cue that it's safe to go into the rest and digest mode. It doesn't have to be activated on the sympathetic nervous system to shiver or shift blood flow around. And you want to have the absence of low vibrations in your environment. So basically, like, you don't want to have something that sounds like a predator that's about to get you, about to get your reptile. And also, just natural kind of indirect lighting is good. Often the really bright lights can be activating for people's bodies. So the next thing, to get back into the rest and digest, talking about exposing yourself to external cues of safety. Again, because we're mammals, we can expose ourselves to other humans or other mammals. And what are the things that are happening that our bodies are taking in? Our bodies are going to take in vocal prosody, it's called. It has to do with the tone, the rhythm, whether or not the voice goes up and down in a sing-songy melodic way. That's a cue that our bodies, absolutely nothing to do with our cognitive mind, our bodies take in those sounds and receive that as, oh, this other person is a safe person. And so through our ears are taking that information into our brainstem and assessing that safety or danger. The open body posture is one. I'm having trouble reading my screen here. Okay, another human or an animal, if there's like a soft connected eye gaze that can also break contact, it doesn't feel intrusive. It's a quality that you've probably felt before, but that type of a gaze can be a cue of safety. And also facial expressions that communicate safety. Again, it's like almost like if there's a person that you kind of have a sense that my body feels safe around this person, then there's something in their facial cues that they're doing that your body's picking up on that feels safe to you. There's actually eye muscles that we don't control that are attached to our inner ear. This is pretty fascinating stuff about how mammals are able to communicate and connect and assess safety. It's all wired up in here and connected automatically. But the inner ear muscle, when it's tuned in to be able to detect the frequency of human speech versus the predator sound, the muscles cause certain types of wrinkles to happen around the ear muscle. Middle ear muscle activation causes certain muscles around the eyes to also activate, so that we can see them. Our bodies know basically when another human is currently paying attention and listening to other humans. It's like our reptile has the ability to be social, listen to other humans, or like be concerned about predators that are around. So when we look at other humans and we see that other human is really just listening for other predators, that's a visual cue just in their eyes that we see, that our bodies pick up on and have a sense of whether that person is noticing danger or not. And then it's like, yeah, we're all connected. So here we've got this strategy where we're picking up on the cues that, oh, there's a cue that this other person is not feeling safe. I think I'm not going to feel safe too now. It's like part of this whole co-regulation phenomena. So, okay, so picking up on that. And yeah, so there's a whole bunch of research out there. You could look at this right brain to right brain co-regulation in terms of like how babies cradle how mothers cradle their babies, which is predominantly they'll hold their babies on the left, and that lines up the baby's nervous system to the mother's like the meddler's left heart, which is the left side of the body, which is innervated by her right brain. And then that basically really helps to support the co-regulation between the two creatures. So there's opportunities out there if you are externally exposing yourself to cues and you're co-regulating with another human body, where you can try to orient your touch so that you co-regulate more completely, maybe more quickly. This is too long, everybody. Okay, and then what else can you do? You can expose yourself to external cues of safety in order to kind of reset your reptile. And you can also generate your own internal cues of safety. So our bodies are constantly neurocepting the external environment, but they're also taking in information from our viscera. The nerve signals go back up and the brainstem takes that into account. So when you change your breathing, particularly to exhalation that is slower than the inhalation, this is a signal that it's a cue of safety. And also you can do different things to metabolize your the hormones by allowing metabolize the stress hormones, that is, by doing things like crying or shaking. So maybe even just like going for a run to burn off some adrenaline or things like that. But crying is so freaking helpful. And I hope we get to talk more about crying, and I think that we will get into that and tie that back into these cues of safety and what's going on with that, and tie it into a lot of these yogic traditions, like what they're doing with their different meditations and kriyas. Okay, there's something called the oculocardiac reflex, which also the yogis know about, but they don't call it that. There is, again, so like the eyes are going directly into the brainstem as one of their paths, and the brainstem directly connected down into the heart via the vagus nerve. And so via the oculocardiac reflex, there's just like shifting the style of vision that you do between convergent and divergent eye gaze actually activates the vagus nerve and helps to slow down your heart rate. So that's something that you can do internally. Also, just shifting your body posture to be a body posture that would be considered a restful, safe posture, an open body posture, softer shoulders, softer belly, open, exposing. Like when we're safe, we expose our ventral side, our front side, because this is the dangerous side, or the side that is the vulnerable side, right? Like if we are not feeling safe, we're gonna protect our front side. And so if our bodies are picking up on that all the time as a cue, like an internal cue. So if we change our actual body posture and we open up and we expose our front side to the environment, then our neuroception will take that as an internal cue of safety. Also, vocal vibration. There are nerves in the larynx that the vibrations, the way that they're activated, again, like through that tone of speech, can actually be a cue of safety going into our brainstem. So singing, chanting can be super great. And then to get back to the rest and digest state, overall, just if you can do things in your life that can help kind of like lower the baseline amount of stress that you have in your life so that you're not so close to that overwhelm spot or that overload spot. So you could change what you can change in your life situation. Maybe you can fix little micro stresses, like maybe you've got like hair ties in your hair or like pants that are itchy or something, or there's some little pain that you kind of always just like ignore. Little micro things like that add up. So you could be working on removing micro stresses from your life. There's so many ways to do that. You could work on your inner landscape, like your thoughts, beliefs, inner critic, and developing skills. We'll get into this with the personality training for sure. But then efficiency in your foundational life systems. That's kind of also like fixing the micro stresses and changing what you can. And efficiency in your physical body through training. So I'm going to talk about efficiencies and inefficiencies in triplex. So some specific methods, there's just so many. There's basically so many things out there that work to help a person to get out of a stuck state. And I kind of actually believe that a lot of us are kind of we're already picking up on this. Like we're already noticing it. And if we're not noticing it, chances are there's things in our life or things that we're starting to do that maybe we're not noticing yet, but that are coming in for us and that are going to be helping us as a part of our innate wisdom. Like our innate wisdom of our bodies actually want to go back to this safety space when they can. They want it. They want to be able to regulate and restore, regenerate. So different types, I just kind of broke them up this way, but there's different breath and energy practices that you can connect to, learn about, try out, sample. So again, like the singing, the chanting, for me personally, it has been super great. The breath work, just the vagal break. So many of these different practices have this notion of a slower exhalation, or like pausing the breath and then doing a slow exhalation through the mouth. That being really important for being a signal going back to a rest and digest state. And you think about what's a yawn. It's like our body is shifting into that state. It's something that's going back into that regulated state, helping us to go transition. So somatic touch, there's again lots of different modalities out there, or methods out there for helping us to get back to a rest and digest state, including somatic experiencing. There's the EFT tapping, traumatic release exercises, PETs, and then so many different like neurocircuitry. I put them under that heading, but honestly, like the other methods they're all impacting your neurocircuitry. If you're practicing all these things regularly, your body is going to be building new connections that help you to get back into these states more regularly. And we're going to talk more about that in part 2 as well. So yeah, okay. Well, all right, and then what you can do, another thing you can do, a method, is you can use entrainment to your advantage. And so entrainment with nature, entrainment is this phenomena that things tend to come into vibrating or come into synchrony. And gave some examples in the handout of things, even like pendulums or crystals can come into entrainment. But our physiology can come into entrainment with nature. Nature has a lovely, slower, more slower vibration. Talking about like not necessarily the nature like right outside my front window where there's a street like 25 feet away constantly buzzing with cars. No, like more of a pristine natural environment. And you could entrain with music, pay attention to the different music styles that you're listening to, because our physiology, our internal space, definitely will match up with music that you're pumping in. So this input is something that's going to be shifting the internal experience. It has the potential to. You could entrain with binaural beats. So we're talking about getting back to the rest and digest state. And the rest and digest state is going to be associated more with like low beta state, alpha state. And so the binaural beats and these different like brainwave entrainment technologies have to do with using our ears to to hear certain frequency patterns that then our brains will entrain to. And so it's just as simple as that. Trying to get that overall ambient frequency in our brain that is associated with the rest and digest state, to have an external cue that's the same, and then we match up to that in our physiology, and then that puts us into a restorative state, and into a state where our bodies can heal. And you can co-regulate with mammals. It can be your cat, your dog, or a horse, or other mammals that you have friendships with. You can co-regulate with them to help get you back into a rest and digest state. I would say that not all animals, because our pets are living with us, and you pay attention to the little animals that are out there, you can see these same tendencies that our animals get into stuck states as well. So it can be a process to be working with your animals. You may be interacting with an animal who's agitated, and you may be potentially taking some of that on, or you can be working on training your skills, or leveraging your skills of your ability to self-regulate, and then maybe be there to help that animal through co-regulation, to be kind of the foundation for them, to help their physiology to come back into a more of a rest and digest state. But yeah, maybe just noticing, we're going to try to train our awareness for what's going on with our bodies, but we can be aware of what's going on with the pets that we're interacting with, or with the other human beings that I'm interacting with, and make some predictions about the co-regulation that might be happening, and some choices about whether or not the co-regulation that may come from that situation might ultimately be better for us in this moment, or something that may be overall draining, and maybe draining our life force in that moment. So yeah, I'm thinking about let's see, the dogs and the cats. Let's see. I feel like cats are, I'm trying to think a dog that I had that knew that was really skittish. Oh, I know a good story about that one. I was on a job site, and there was someone brought this little dog who was very nervous out and about traveling, and it was a small dog, and it was just barking. Really, it was scared. Felt really threatened, and its owner had put it underneath the trailer on the job site. And I'm just walking around on the job site, and I'm walking around in my normal work mode. So I was in more of a beta mode, and so I was sympathetic nervous system activation. I was doing my job, and but I wasn't alert enough to know that this little dog was underneath the trailer. And this little dog, as I walk underneath underneath the umbrella, jumps out and just barks like you would not believe at me. And I was so scared. I was so startled that I shouted. And then immediately I start laughing, because laughing is so great. It just releases this energy of this excess energy that's not really necessary. It's a way that I'm slowing down my exhale naturally. My body knows it's not actually a super life threat. I've reassessed it. I start laughing, and then my physiology shifts. But my coworker saw me, and she thought it was so hilarious, and it really was. This little tiny dog just scared the shit out of me, basically. But yeah, so just want to maybe wrap up this lecture now. Hopefully you can speed it up, or it's an hour. Just wanted to share this presentation, that it is possible to, if you've experienced a lot of stress, or if you've experienced trauma in your physical body, if you've experienced disease and difficulties, it is possible to just work with your body, just your body as a life unit. Start there, and to practice your awareness about what these cues of safety are that you can provide to your physical body, and start to get some traction of experiencing, after giving cues of safety to your body, start to feel it become, hopefully inch back towards this rest and digest state, and start to maybe experiment with um, some internal cues of safety, like actually generating some stimuli for your nervous system that might help it to know that it's safe. And then start to work on reducing your stressors in your life. And these things, continuing to work at them, train, um, and stick with it, do the work, you will see results. I totally believe that. And so that's what I wanted to share for this part of the talk. The next part, I'm going to get into talking about the challenges in this process. And I think that's going to be a really interesting discussion. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of you and hearing your questions. Please keep track of what you notice are questions that you have. I really want to support your curiosity, and also bringing them to class to share, because that's really valuable for, yeah, just like helping to direct the flow of the class to make it more useful for you. Um, Thank you, everyone. Look forward to seeing you soon.